Good morning, it's the 28th of April 2024. People like me to speak up. I do my best. Election law. If we're going to try and get these creeps and politicians out of our government, we have to know what the law is. Now, I have to say I'm not your lawyer, and I have no input into how this is used. I've often given advice on law and seen barristers make a complete hames of it in the court. So I can't take responsibility for how you use this. Now, I'm cutting out an awful lot of the Electoral Acts 1992 because most of it people will know. There's no point me telling you something you already know. Now, so in part 6 of the Act, of the maximum duration of the Dáil, there's the resignation of members of the Dáil, persons returned for 2 or more constituencies, and re-election of the chairman of the Dáil. The speaker or the chairman of the Dáil is automatically re-elected under section 36. So we're going to see what happens if a lad or a lassie is returned for 2 seats. So what would happen if someone stood in Louth and stood in Leitrim? Can you do it? If at an election any person is returned as a member of the Dáil for 2 or more constituencies, such a person shall deliver to the clerk of the Dáil, before taking his seat for any one of such constituencies, a declaration in writing signed by him stating which of these constituents he elects to represent in the Dáil. You cannot represent 2 constituencies. I don't have a problem with it, to tell you the truth. I don't have a problem with it. Although, if you got elected for 7 constituencies because you're a great man, why couldn't you hold 7 votes in it? Like that wouldn't be a bad idea. But anyway, I'm not making a big deal. You have to tell the clerk of the Dáil which one you're going to represent. So if it's Louth or Leitrim, clearly you'd want to represent Leitrim. So I mean, you'd have to notify him. You have to do that. Such in writing, not less than 30 days after the first day on which the Dáil sits. And you shall be deemed elected for that constituency. So soon as a person returned to 2 or more constituencies elects or is under the foregoing subsection deemed to have been elected, which of such constituencies he will represent, he shall be deemed to have resigned the other seat in the constituency for which he shall have been returned. So then if he elects to be the TD for Leitrim, he is automatically debarred from being the TD for Louth. All right, that's something you learn every day. Section 35. Section 35. So now, who's disqualified from being a TD? A TD, by the way, for foreigners, is a member of Parliament in Ireland, right? Chop the Dáil, House of the Dáil. Right. A person who is not a citizen of Ireland or has not reached the age of 21, is a member of the Commission of the European Communities, is a judge, advocate or register of the Court of Justice of the European Communities, is a member of the Court of Auditors of the European Communities, is a member of An Garda Síochána, that's a policeman, is a whole-time member of the Defence Forces, a soldier or a Navy man, a woman, is a civil servant who is not by the terms of employment expressly permitted to be a member of the Dáil, is a person of unsound mind. There we have them, unsound mind. Crowd of loopers up there. That had Rodney O'Gorman, Jim O'Callaghan, Micheál Martin. Sure, he's not of a sound mind. They should be gone. Person of unsound mind. I love that one. Is undergoing a sentence of imprisonment for any term exceeding 6 months, whether with or without hard labour. Well, if I get them politicians the way I want them, they'll get hard labour, or of penal servitude for any period imposed by a court of competent jurisdiction, is an undischarged bankrupt under the adjudication by a court or competent jurisdiction in the state. He shall not be eligible. I needn't go into that. An undischarged bankrupt, you have to go through the whole process before you can sit. Presume it's to stop having the influence of being a TD, depriving people of money you owe them. We not go there. Happy enough with all this. Now we're cutting on now to appointment of agents. Section 59, and we'll see what it says. A candidate may appoint one election agent to assist him generally in relation to Dáil election. You may, you don't have to. I would strongly advise having an election agent. A candidate or his election agent may appoint, with respect to any polling district in a constituency, one deputy agent to assist the candidate in the polling district. So that's to have a lad in the polling booth. You know, they're nearly no good. They don't do anything. Well, he could try and persuade people to vote for you, I suppose, but he's not allowed to do it by right, you know. So you can't influence voters coming in. It may be revoked where an appointment of an election agent under this is revoked. There's a whole lot of stuff there. The person by whom an agent is appointed under this section shall immediately after appointment give notice of appointment to the returning officer. So you have to tell the returning officer. Not that relevant. So we'll go through some of the things that I think is relevant. You can study it yourself if you want. So we'll go through here. The times of the poll. The time of the poll is shall be taken on such day as shall be appointed by the minister order, being a day which, disregarding any excluding day, is not earlier than the 17th day or later than the 25th day following the day on which the writ was issued for the election. Not very important. Shall continue for such period be not less than 12 hours. Now there has to be 12 hours. Between 8 a.m. and 10:30 p.m. as may be fixed by the minister. And it has to be published in Irrecificul, that's the government publications, right? Now, section 100, I'm not going to open it here. You can go in for a disabled person or a blind person physically or whatever, and you can vote on their behalf provided they're present, and there's a limit on how many you can do that for in one day. I'll read out the section headings and you can study them for yourself, starting at 133. Offences in relation to registration of electors, personation, bribery, undue influence, breach of secrecy, offences relating to ballot boxes, disorderly conduct at election meeting. And there's one for you, disorderly conduct at election meeting. So we'll have a quick look and see what does that mean. Now, a person shall be guilty of an offence if between the date of the issue of a writ for an election or a member of or members of the Dáil for a constituency and the date on which the return is made by the clerk of the Dáil, he acts disorderly manner at a lawful public meeting held in connection with an election. I seen that happening in a town where two Fianna Fáil candidates' factions fought on the street over who got the vote of that area. So you see, you can't actually, it's an offence to behave in a disorderly manner at an election meeting. But what does that entail? Definitely firing cabbage heads up at the politician would seem to be it. A person who aids or abets, counsel or procures the commission of an offence shall be guilty of an offence. So I suppose they're entitled to put their case. You'll be entitled to ask questions, but you can't just roar and bawl either. Personation, bribery, undue influence, breach of secrecy, offences relating to ballot boxes, disorderly conduct at election meeting have dealt with that, omission of the name and address of the printer or publishing on Dáil documents. This is law. You have to put the name and address. Now I'll read this to you. Every notice, bill, poster or similar document having a reference to a Dáil election or distributed for the purposes of furthering the candidate or any candidate at a Dáil election shall bear upon its face the name and address of the printer and of the publisher thereof. A person shall be guilty of an offence if he prints, publishes or posts or causes to be printed, published or posted any such notice, bill or poster or similar document as aforesaid, which does not bear on its face the name and address of the printer and the publisher. I don't know what it doesn't. I'll have to check, see what publisher means, and do that in another video. The provision of that shall not apply in respect of a notice, bill, poster or other document printed or published or posted by the returning officer. That's irrelevant. For the purpose of this section, print includes any process of producing copies of a notice, etc., etc. So you have that, folks. Section 151, false statement of withdrawal or death of a candidate. You can't come along and say the candidate died. That's a false statement. That's an offence. So section 152, Any person who, before or during a Dáil election, makes or publishes any statement which is likely to mislead voters as to the actual process of voting shall be guilty of an offence. So if I made a video here and said that the most useful vote was the number 7, it's better than number 5, that would be a misleading statement. That's an offence, would you believe? Well, I suppose that's to stop people making it up and trying to dissuade people or fool people, telling, give your man number 4, that's the best vote. I mean, that would be misleading. So no problem there, just telling you about it. Section 162, a person who has voted in a Dáil election shall not in any legal proceedings be required to state how or for whom he voted. That's self-explanatory. Undue influence, section 136. A person who, in relation to a Dáil election, directly or indirectly makes use or threatens to make use of force, violence, restraint, or inflicts or causes or threatens to inflict or causes any temporal or spiritual injury or loss on any person who attempts by abduction, duress, or fraud to induce or compel a person to vote or restrain from voting, etc., etc. You can't catch the voter going into the polling station, put him in a trailer and lock him in it until the election's over. You can't do that. That's an offence, among other things, common sense. Section 132, a Dáil election can only be questioned by a petition to the High Court. So you can only go to court. If you're not happy, you have to go to the High Court. Now, folks, on 11 minutes, I've given a rough rundown of